History remembers certain battles not merely for who won or lost, but for the scale of the carnage, the brilliance of the tactics, and the long shadow they cast over the centuries. The Battle of Cannae, fought on August 2nd, 216 BC, during the Second Punic War, is one of those rare events that contains all three elements. It is celebrated as a masterpiece of battlefield strategy and feared as one of the bloodiest single days of warfare in ancient history. On that summer day in southern Italy, Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who had already humiliated Rome in two earlier battles, orchestrated a military maneuver so perfect and so deadly that it has been studied by generals for over 2 millennia. Out of approximately 86,000 Roman soldiers who marched onto the field, as many as 50,000, 70,000 would lie dead before nightfall. It was not just a defeat, it was a slaughter that shook the foundations of the Roman Republic. To understand how such a disaster unfolded, we must first understand the rivalry between Rome and Carthage, and how Hannibal brought his war to the very heart of Italy. The road to Cannae. The Second Punic War, 218-201 BC, was the sequel to an earlier struggle for dominance. The First Punic War, 264-241 BC, in which Rome had emerged victorious, seizing Sicily from Carthage. The defeat wounded Carthaginian pride and weakened its power, but it also bred a new generation determined to reclaim lost glory. Among them was Hannibal Barca. Hannibal was the son of Hamilcar Barca, a Carthaginian general who had fought Rome to a standstill in Sicily. Legend says that when Hannibal was a boy, his father made him swear before the gods that he would never be a friend to Rome. That oath would define his life. After the First Punic War, Carthage expanded into Spain, securing rich silver mines and building a strong army. Hannibal took command in 221 BC and wasted no time in provoking Rome. His attack on the Roman-allied city of Saguntum triggered war in 218 BC. What followed was one of the most audacious military campaigns in history. Hannibal marched his army, complete with war elephants, from Spain, across the Pyrenees, through southern Gaul, and over the snowbound Alps into Italy. The crossing was brutal. Many men and animals perished, yet the survivors were battle-hardened and fiercely loyal. Early triumphs. Hannibal's arrival in Italy caught Rome by surprise, and he wasted no time delivering crushing defeats. In December 218 BC, he smashed a Roman army at the Trebia River. 6 months later, in June 217 BC, he lured another Roman force into a deadly trap at Lake Trasimene, killing tens of thousands. By 216 BC, Rome was desperate to stop him. The Senate abandoned its cautious approach and resolved to assemble the largest army the Republic had ever fielded, hoping to crush Hannibal in one decisive blow. This decision would prove fatal. The armies at Cannae, Hannibal's army, was a diverse force of around 50,000 men. His corps was composed of hardened African infantry, veterans armed with heavy spears and shields. Alongside them fought swift and deadly Spanish swordsmen, ferocious Gallic warriors known for their size and strength, and the famed Numidian cavalry, light horsemen unmatched in speed and maneuverability. The Roman army, led by the consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, numbered around 86,000. Most were infantry, packed into a dense block to maximize their pushing power. Rome's cavalry was inferior both in skill and numbers. The chosen battlefield was near the town of Cannae, on a flat, open plain by the Aufidus River. It was ideal terrain for cavalry, a fact that suited Hannibal perfectly. The morning of battle, the sun rose over a dusty plain, and the air was already hot. Hannibal placed his weakest troops, the Gauls and Spaniards, in a shallow crescent in the center. His African infantry stood slightly back on both flanks, like the jaws of a trap waiting to snap shut. Cavalry forces guarded the wings, with the heavy cavalry under Hasdrubal on the left and the swift Numidians under Hannibal on the right. The Romans, confident in their overwhelming numbers, packed their infantry deep and narrow, intending to punch through Hannibal's center. The trap springs shut. The battle began with the cavalry engagement on the wings. On Hannibal's left, Hasdrubal's heavy cavalry smashed into the Roman horsemen, quickly driving them from the field. On the right, the Numidians tied down Rome's allied cavalry, preventing them from aiding the center. Meanwhile, in the middle, the Romans advanced, forcing Hannibal's crescent-shaped line to bend inward. It seemed as if the Carthaginian center was collapsing. The Romans pushed harder, crowding into the narrowing space exactly as Hannibal intended. At the critical moment, the African infantry on both flanks pivoted inward, attacking the Roman sides. Almost simultaneously, Hasdrubal's victorious cavalry swung around to strike the Roman rear. The Roman army was now surrounded on all sides. The infamous double envelopment, the slaughter at Cannae. Ancient historian Polybius described the killing as relentless, with the press of bodies so tight that men could barely lift their swords. Livy wrote of soldiers standing on heaps of corpses,
fighting desperately before being cut down.
The air was filled with the screams of the dying, the clash of steel, and the choking dust of the battlefield. With no room to maneuver and no way to escape, the Romans were cut down methodically. Some accounts say the killing went on for hours, with Carthaginian soldiers taking turns to rest while the slaughter continued. By nightfall, between 50,000 and 70,000 Romans were dead. Another 10,000 were taken prisoner. The news of the disaster plunged Rome into mourning. 1/3 of the Senate was dead. In a city where almost every family had lost someone, the grief was overwhelming. Religious rituals were held and emergency measures were enacted. Many of Rome's allies in southern Italy defected to Hannibal's side, believing Rome could not recover. Yet Hannibal did not march on Rome itself. His cavalry commander Hannibal urged him to seize the moment, reportedly saying, "You know how to win a victory,
Hannibal, but not how to use it."
Hannibal declined, perhaps fearing the city's strong walls or lacking the siege equipment needed. Rome, instead of surrendering, steeled itself for a long war. Over time, it adopted a war of attrition, refusing to face Hannibal in pitched battle, and instead cutting off his supply lines. 14 years later, at the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Hannibal was finally defeated, ending the Second Punic War. Why Cannae still matters. The Battle of Cannae is more than a historical episode. It's a tactical blueprint. Military academies still study Hannibal's maneuver as the ultimate example of encirclement. Generals from Napoleon to Schwarzkopf had drawn lessons from it. But Cannae is also a warning. The Romans believed their numerical superiority guaranteed victory. Instead, they learned that poor strategy can turn overwhelming strength into catastrophic weakness. The battle's brutality, scale, and genius ensure that its legacy endures, a testament to Hannibal's brilliance and to the terrible price of hubris.
Lessons from Cannae.
1. Superior tactics can defeat superior. Numbers. Hannibal's outnumbered. Army crushed a force almost twice its size. 2. Terrain as a weapon. Choosing Cannae's plains allowed Hannibal's cavalry to dominate. 3. Deception works. The feigned retreat of the center drew the Romans into a perfect killing ground. 4. Overconfidence is fatal. Rome's belief in inevitable victory blinded them to the trap. The Battle of Cannae was a day of triumph for Carthage and a day of mourning for Rome. It demonstrated the heights of human strategic genius and the depths of human slaughter. Though Rome eventually recovered and even destroyed Carthage decades later, the name Cannae still evokes awe among military historians. It is a chilling reminder: in war, numbers alone do not decide victory,
And a single day can alter the fate of empire.
If this deep dive into Cannae's blood-soaked history gripped you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe if you appreciate history told with vivid detail.